welcome to the World Lens podcast, where once a week we take a look at what's happening through a global business perspective. I am Curtis Sprung, your erstwhile editor, subbing in for Michelle Evans. And as always, I am joined by Bruce McIndoe, president of McIndoe Risk Advisory and a WTCI board member. Welcome, Bruce.
Hey, good morning.
So today we're talking about EVs, or electric vehicles. Now, I'm not sure if either of us is an expert when it comes to this, but there's been just a couple of stories in the news recently about trends in this space, and I felt like it was important for us to chat about what's going on.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, Bruce, do you own or have you driven an EV before?
Well, anybody that's played golf has probably driven an EV. There's actually some more truth to that, but I have driven an EV street legal vehicle, but not mine. I have a hybrid, and that'll be part of the theme here because it reflects my risk hedging nature, high fuel mileage without the hassle of recharging. So that'll be the theme.
Fair enough. That's similar to my experience. I rented I believe it was a Tesla one time when I was home visiting family, and it was definitely an experience. I felt the one takeaway for me was I felt that the indicator, the charge indicator of how much I had to go, wasn't 100% accurate.
That's not good. I have a buddy of mine that has a little generator in his trunk.
Oh, interesting.
Right, with unfortunately gas, which was, I told him that's probably not a great thing. But anyway, yeah, just so and then his attitude is, okay, well, if I get into trouble, I'll just pull over and sit and read my phone and let it charge for a while.
So, there you go. That's one way to do it, I guess. Although, I suppose if you're charging it with gas, I think that kind of defeats the purpose.
Well,
right?
It's just an emergency, so hopefully you don't do that very often, if ever. But of carrying course. Around a gas tank or gas can in your trunk is probably not a great thing.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So one of the first stories I wanted to talk about here intersects with some of the other topics that we've discussed on the podcast before, mainly trade policy and China, which is that recently Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio urged for a ban on the import of Chinese-made electric vehicles into the United States. So why is this U.S. Senator looking to ban these EV imports?
Oh, like all good politicians, Ohio is a big auto industry player. So they're number one in production of engines and number two in transmissions. So just a little Ohio lore. I would say that he and the Biden administration have seen this rodeo before. And don't want a repeat of the Chinese shock that we had in the early 2000s, where Chinese imports flooded into the U.S. economy and market, and really just killed businesses. And I think there was an estimate. I know from 2001 to now, it's like 4 million lost jobs. But in that period, I think it was like 2 million lost jobs to cheap Chinese goods, right?
Wow.
And so that's right there in their face, and they're in election mode, and they want to protect, Ohio auto workers.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And some of these Chinese EVs are cheap, and I mean like really cheap. I think I saw one online with an estimated price of like $10,000, which is pretty low for any car, really. And at a time when it seems like there is a push for, greater adoption of EVs, growth of that electric market all over, doesn't a ban like this kind of go against that?
I guess at some level, but you can't look at anything, one dimensional, right? You have to look at the entire objective here. And so we have to look at the entire kind of economic system and how that protects our national interests, right? Whether it's the economy and jobs, but also national security and and independence, right? We've seen this through the pandemic and other areas where the US has done so much offshoring and outsourcing that we have very limited capability in strategic areas to actually take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got all of that dynamic revolves around this, because electric vehicles are the future, period end. Chinese, because of their top down managed economy and their big stick about how they spend their trillions of dollars, have systematically made a commitment on their typical 5-year strategy. They tell the world what they're going to do, and then they do it, and have substantial control over the entire supply chain in producing EVs. So that helps reduce costs. They share these resources amongst different companies. So instead of 8 companies spending $8 billion each, right, the government spends 30 billion and shares it with them, right? So
Right.
again, lower R&D costs. They control the raw materials. They have cheaper labor. Therefore, you have a $10,000 EV.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about how, like, I know when Tesla makes one of those gigafactories to make new batteries, like, that's a big deal because of, they've got that level of scale there. So I
Mm-hmm.
was gonna ask about that, subsidization there.
Well, and that's the other part of it is, and the whole Tesla thing. I mean, Tesla helped supercharge their research and development around batteries, right?
Yeah.
So they contributed to this Chinese juggernaut in EV, and a big part of their business. So the Chinese, and we've done this as well with our credits and subsidies for people to buy EVs, right? So basically, China invested in these companies. Then they provided subsidies to the domestic people, citizens, to buy the products, right? So they were creating a market, funded, with incentives from the government to prop up these companies and get them to scale, and then start moving out globally and becoming a global juggernaut. Is the model that they're really good at.
Yeah. No, it's been very interesting to watch, but there's something else to talk about here, which is the other kind of thrust of articles that I've seen online, which is that there's a perceived slowdown in that EV market. There's, stories out there about
Mm-hmm.
car dealers with lots full of EVs. They can't sell them, or the resale value of these things is tanking.
Mm-hmm.
And places like BP just announced that it's cutting 10% of its workforce on its, charging business. And Tesla announced that they're laying off 10% of their, global staff.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about this big, EV is the future, period. But what's going on here? Things are slowing down.
I'll be the historian. We
Okay.
have been here before. Okay.
Okay.
The first 100% electric car at the time, EV, was on the road in the United States in the 1830s.
The 1830s.
1830s.
Okay.
Okay. Now, that was a non rechargeable battery, but they had a standard battery chassis. And so I would drive my electric car around. And when it was getting low, I would go into a shed. They would pull out the chassis, put in refreshed battery, or not refreshed, but new batteries, and send me on my way. 1830s. Okay.
Wow.
We had rechargeable batteries were invented in the 1859. Okay. And then that helped. Now I could recycle the batteries and recharge them, and all of that, was a better deal, right? And by I guess it was like 1900, let's say, in that 1/3 of the vehicles, 30% of the vehicles on the road were EVs.
Wow.
Okay. Which is the goal that we have in 1930, in 2035 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was like so from the 1900s, so by 19, let's say 30, which is what was sticking in my mind, because we have our EV goals 2035. Anyway, by the 1930s, they were all but extinct. Okay.
Yeah.
Why did they go extinct? Better roads, which meant people were going longer distances
Right.
and trusting the EV and being able to get a recharged battery pack and all that became frustrating.
Okay.
And oil, right? Cheap oil and the combustion engine. And people said, I'm not going to put up with this hassle anymore where I have to go in and trade out, the battery chassis, whatever. I just have this thing and I can putt along with it and put gas in and I'm good to go. And the market crashed, right? And so we're having the same challenges, especially in the United States. We have these massive country, right?
Yeah.
And urban use of electric vehicles, especially for commercial stuff, wonderful. But for people to rent a car, if you look at the rental agencies, how many of them have shed EVs because people don't want to rent them, right? It's like, okay, I might be in San Francisco, that's fine, but then I want to run down to Pismo Beach, or I'm going to go up to, you know, Seattle or Portland or whatever, and it's like it's too scary, right? And so
Yeah.
not having this like confidence in the recharging, infrastructure and those kinds of things just makes people not want to go down that road. And then they're like me and they get a hybrid and they're happy enough.
No, I can understand that. I mean, like I
Mm-hmm.
said at the top, I rented an electric car,
Mm-hmm.
and it was there's a difference between, popping into one gas station, which are everywhere,
Right, exactly.
and
That's the
filling
key.
up versus, plugging into the computer. Here I am. Okay, here's the close one, and now I can stop for, 20 minutes and
Mhm.
get the juice I need to get to the airport, or in my case, going to my parents'
Mhm.
house. It's a little different.
Yeah, it's so I went online because I was interested. It's like, okay, well, let's put some numbers behind this, right? About what's happening out there. And
Yeah.
so there was a 65% increase in hybrid auto sales last year, 2023, totaling 1.2 million vehicles, right? And so the number of EV vehicles sold last year, 1.2 million. And then it was
Okay.
like I don't know, 17% growth or whatever, right? So the consumers are voting because, and as much as a lot of charging infrastructure has been put in place, but it's not all that obvious. Like you said, I have to put it on a map, right? It's not like I go down and I see Exxon and whatever the local gas company, and so I'm constantly reinforced. Oh, there's a gas station, but I can see another one right down the road, or I know at this
Right.
exit there's a big sign that says that there's gas here, right? So I'm constantly reinforced that it's not going to be a problem to get gas, right? But people don't have that confidence right now as far as charging and the time.
Yeah. Well, the flip side of that too is, some of these charging stations can be found in places that you maybe wouldn't expect. Like, I know when I go to the grocery store, they have at least, I think it's 4 spots up front where you can charge your vehicle
Mm-hmm.
while you're in the grocery store. Or this morning when I parked to come into the office, in that, the parking structure, there's 4 or
Yeah.
5 spots that these are the charging spots. Now, granted, it's only 4 or 5 spots, and if you're
That
going to
was
be
what I
there
was
for
going
a
to say.
couple
That
hours,
all works right now because there's few. The percentage of EV vehicles is pretty low. But if everybody has an EV vehicle, that doesn't work. And there's companies out there converting traffic. I mean. Utility poles and lamp poles and turning them into charging areas. So if I'm parked on the in a parking space along a roadway, I can connect up to it and charge while I'm going to a restaurant or whatever it is. But that's not there yet, right? So
yeah.
mhm.
No, it definitely feels like this is a space where there is a ton of opportunity out there for somebody to, be the guy that, all right, I'm going to convert all of the parking meters in the city, and those are all going to have plugs in them now,
Right.
and you make some money that way. But also, there's got to be the cars driving around so you can actually make that money, right? So it's
Right.
an interesting moment in this,
And
EV
that's what that,
space.
the Inflation Reduction Act and all that, what's, making investments in this, right? To get not only EV production and those kinds of things keyed up, which is it's been doing, but also helping to subsidize getting charging stations and that, out for this exact reason.
Yeah, I think I read something that the specifically the Inflation Reduction Act said there's like, I think you get $7,500 back if you buy a plug-in EV, and that extended the
Hmm.
credit up through, another 6 or 7 years through 2032. Do you
Right.
think that we're going to see more credits applied like that in the future? Because it costs a lot of money to buy an EV right now. You could, 30,000, 35. It's a lot of money.
And that's why there's all the conversation back with the politics and tariffs and those kinds of things, because if you look at it right now, and if the Chinese were to come in with $15,000 EVs that were decent quality and functional, and I'm looking at a 30, 40, $50,000 EV, it will kill our EV capability as far as manufacturing, production, and sales, and that's what they're trying to avoid. And again, going back to the kind of the Chinese model, we need integrated thinking about how do we, incentivize demand so that the companies, have sales, right?
Right.
And can continue to enhance and get to scale and reduce costs and those kinds of things, and that requires good policies, and it requires investments both by private sector and government. And unfortunately, we don't have a functioning government that's actually focused on these issues in a way that is good for America. And it's very discouraging. And there's a lot of people out there trying to move the mountain, but and we are limping along. I think I'm pretty sure I saw uh, even the Biden administration talking about banning Chinese EVs, right?
Yeah.
So not even like doubling. I think the tariff already is 20 some percent, right? And in order to protect the investments through the IRA, the what 1 point whatever zillions of dollars that was, to preserve that investment and get this nascent market up and running more efficiently. So that's going to be in the news, and it's going to be through the political process between now and November. And I don't, whether it's Biden or Trump, this is not going away. We're going to protect this arena because it is, one is oil is finite.
Yeah.
It's also continuing to cause, climate change and pollution, which is one of the reasons the Chinese, went at this so hard. It's like this solves a huge amount of their urban pollution problems, right? If they can move everything to EV. So it's a like mandatory outcome for them. So anyway, yeah, so it's really important that we kind of get our act together. Yep.
It's funny you bring up, oil and gas, and call it a finite resource, but
Hmm.
in the big batteries that we're putting in these EVs, I mean, those have a lot of rare earth metals in them, don't they, as well?
Yeah,
So
they do.
what is the, I mean, are we just trading one expensive resource for another here?
So actually, no.
Oh no. Okay. That's good then.
And it's actually a nascent area in my mind where the U.S. could have like world domination, practically. Now I'm a little bit hyperbolic, but anyway, So think about it, that somebody's got to go out there and dig all these rare earth metals out of the ground. They've got to process them, then they've got to form them, get them in the supply chain to build a battery, right? Then they put the battery into the vehicle, and then that eventually battery becomes exhausted.
Right.
Okay, so that's what's happening now. But if I take those batteries and I recycle them, which people are doing, and they're making good money at it. Well, now think about it. I recycle them, but I don't have to go through the extraction, the process, right? All those metals are there. I just need to now separate them. So I just need to process the batteries, separate out all those metals and rare earth metals, and then reprocess them to creating a new battery, right?
Right.
So if we're buying batteries globally, now we're concentrating the inventory of rare earth metals here, because right now, and I'll put a number out there, that the Chinese control 60, 80, and in some cases 90 to more percent of critical rare earth metals like lithium and those. And so,
Wow.
they could literally say, okay, the US, you are building up this big, national capability for batteries and EVs. We're not going to give you any more rare earth metals,
Hmm.
right? So now we're kind of, scrambling around for and looking, to, build mining and production and those kinds of capabilities here in the US and with partners elsewhere, so that we're not hampered by that potential chokehold, right? So
Yeah.
so there's a lot of dimensions to this, but absolutely there's going to be big business. And I know there's a lot of talk about standardizing the battery structure so that they would be interchangeable and that kind of stuff. I hope that came along, but that way you could process it, create a standard battery form, and then apply it into any vehicle. Obviously, that would be the smart thing to do, but hopefully we got there.
We don't always do the smart thing,
Yeah,
but
unfortunately, people think they have proprietary. It's just like the phone cords, right?
oh
Charging cords.
gosh, and I don't even want to go into that one.
Yeah. All
Don't
right.
even want to touch that. So, I mean, overall, Bruce, it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like a lot of opportunity, a lot of challenges to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
How you feeling about this issue? Positive, negative? What's your thoughts?
100% positive. The EV uh, space, and EV in a lot of dimensions, a vehicle is one, is the only rational long-term outcome for the planet and for how we live our lives, right? And that with that as a backdrop, the advances that are in the pipeline right now around solid state and uh, all different kinds of battery technologies for storage of energy, not only for vehicles but even for wind power and solar and those kinds of things. So energy storage is advancing. I have firm belief that we will see new power technology, right? That will, people, have hydrogen power and solid state nuclear reactors and all kinds of things that are out there. But, at some point down the road, probably not in my lifetime, but there'll be, power packs that we won't even need batteries, right? You just put it in there and it has a 10-year life and off you go, right? That's what I see, down the road. And so that's why I'm very positive that, this is where it's going to go. And, gasoline powered combustion engines, people will laugh at, much like we would if we sat there and looked at a steam engine, go right. But I'm less positive, unfortunately, about how the U.S. navigates this, especially in a global market. And
Yeah.
and again, without bipartisan policy support and strategic planning with industry, goes the same with AI as it does with EVs, right? We could very much not end up being a major global player. I think AI we are and will, because it's not manufacturing and hard stuff. It's IP and technology. We're really good at that. But when it comes to making stuff, we struggle.
Well, it is definitely a space to watch, and I am at least heartened to hear that you are positive about the entire EV space in general. So that's a nice way to end this one.
Good.
Thank you
Reasons for
so
hope.
some hope. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bruce. If folks want to hear more insights like this, where can they find you?
McIndoeRiskAdvisory.com, LinkedIn, or at WTCI.
All right. And of course, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please visit the World Trade Center Institute online at WTCI.org for more insights, events, and opportunities. And of course, follow us online at WTC Institute. See you next week.